The Galactic Council's threat assessment chamber hummed with ambient light as Brooklyn stepped through the crystalline archway. Her boots echoed against the polished floor, each step measured and confident. Behind her, Declan adjusted his tactical vest, his eyes scanning the assembled alien delegates with practiced wariness. Species 7419, designation, human, announced the Vexarian Chancellor, its translucent form rippling with bioluminescent patterns. You have been summoned to discuss your classification within the galactic threat matrix. Brooklyn exchanged a glance with Declan. They'd expected this meeting ever since humanity had joined the Council 3 cycles ago. The other species had been watching them with a mixture of curiosity and unease. We're listening, Brooklyn said, crossing her arms. The Chancellor's form shifted, projecting a holographic display into the air. The threat matrix categorizes all spacefaring species into 5 distinct levels. Class 1, harmless. Class 2, minimal. Class 3, moderate. Class 4, significant. The hologram cycled through images of various alien species, each accompanied by dense streams of data. And Class 5? Declan asked, stepping forward. Class 5, Apex, the Chancellor replied, reserved for species that represent existential threats to galactic stability. The Crithian Hive, the Voidborn Collective, species that have decimated entire star systems. Brooklyn felt a chill run down her spine, but she kept her expression neutral. Where do humans fall? The chamber fell silent. The assembled delegates shifted uncomfortably, their various forms of communication creating a discordant symphony of clicks, whistles, and electromagnetic pulses. That, the Chancellor said slowly, is the problem. We cannot classify your species. Declan's hand instinctively moved toward his sidearm. What do you mean? A Thalorian representative, resembling a floating mass of geometric crystals, chimed in. Your species defies categorization. Individually you are fragile. Your natural weapons are negligible. Your homeworld's gravity is punishing by galactic standards, yet you thrive in it. You should be Class 2 at most. But we're not, Brooklyn said, understanding dawning. No, the Chancellor confirmed. In the Battle of Proxima Relay, 2 human vessels defeated a Crithian war fleet of 17 ships. At the siege of Kepler Station, a single human named Martinez held a breach point for 6 hours against Voidborn assault troops, eliminating 43 enemies with primitive projectile weapons. The hologram shifted, displaying combat footage that made several delegates avert their sensory organs. Your species fights with a ferocity we've never documented, continued the Thalorian. You refuse to surrender even when victory is mathematically impossible. You protect other species at great cost to yourselves. You form bonds across species barriers that we believed were insurmountable. Declan's jaw tightened. So what? You think we're dangerous because we don't give up? It's more than that, the Chancellor said. The hologram changed again, showing data streams and probability matrices. Every apex-level species in recorded history has been biologically superior, stronger, faster, more intelligent. But humans, the Chancellor paused. Humans are apex through sheer determination, through what you call stubbornness, through your refusal to accept limitations. Brooklyn stepped forward, her voice steady. You brought us here to tell us we're too dangerous. We brought you here to understand you, the Chancellor replied, because your species asks questions that no other species has asked. Questions that frighten us. What questions? Declan demanded. The Thalorian crystal formation pulsed with anxious energy. 3 cycles ago, during your orientation, your ambassador was shown the threat matrix. She examined it carefully, and then asked a question that has haunted this council ever since. Brooklyn felt her heart rate increase. She had a feeling she knew what was coming. The Chancellor's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. She looked at the apex classification, at the species that had conquered planets and extinguished civilizations, and she asked, what's above apex? The chamber erupted in agitated communication. Delegates argued in their native languages, their distress palpable. Don't you understand? The Thalorian said desperately. No species has ever asked that question. The concept of something beyond apex never occurred to us. It was the ceiling, the ultimate threat level. But your ambassador looked at it and immediately wondered what came next. What could be worse? What could be stronger? Declan's expression hardened. And that scares you. Terrifies us, the Chancellor admitted. Because when we reviewed your species' history, we found the answer. Throughout your evolution, whenever you encountered an apex predator, you didn't accept your place in the food chain. You studied it. You learned from it. You became it. And then you surpassed it. Brooklyn understood now. She looked at Declan, seeing the same realization in his eyes. You think we're going to become something beyond Apex, she said quietly. We fear it's inevitable, the Chancellor said. Your species doesn't see limits as boundaries. You see them as challenges. Every ceiling becomes a floor. Every apex becomes a starting point. The chamber fell silent again. Brooklyn took a deep breath, weighing her words carefully. So what happens now? She asked. Are you going to try to stop us, limit us, classify us as a threat to be eliminated? The Chancellor's form dimmed. We don't know. That's why we called this meeting. To ask you, directly, what are your intentions? What does humanity want? Declan spoke, his voice carrying the weight of billions. Same thing we've always wanted. To survive, to protect our own, to explore, to understand, and if you become something beyond Apex. The Thalorian pressed. What then? Brooklyn smiled, and there was something in that expression that made the assembled delegates unconsciously retreat. Not cruelty, not malice, just an absolute, unshakable confidence. Then I guess you'll find out what comes after Apex, she said. And maybe, if you're lucky, we'll still remember who our friends were when we got there. The Chancellor's form flickered with what might have been resignation or perhaps relief. That, species 7419, is exactly what we feared you would say.